Okay guys, so in today's video what we're going to be looking at is the WetFire tab versus my own homemade sort of fire starter. Now this is just cotton wool, candle wax and some ethanol alcohol, just made in an ice cube tray and left to harden. And this here is just of course your standard WetFire tinder. Now this stuff is great, it does work when wet. I've tried it out, I've even tried floating it in a few different solutions, and you know what, it works great. The purpose of this video isn't to try and beat WetFire with these, it isn't to try and review them and say no, this stuff isn't the best what you can get, this is what we want. This is just, you know, me seeing what this stuff can do as opposed to the professionally made stuff, and possibly giving you guys a little side project that you can try at home. Okay, so let's take it outside and see what happens. Okay, so we've just sparked it up and put our cup on top. Now straight away the WetFire's got a nice big flame, and the ground itself is damp and it is spitting with rain just a little bit. As they say, if it's not raining, you're not training. So let's see how this goes. Okay guys, our quick fire's burned for just over 5 minutes. It's about out, we're still getting a couple little flicks of flame every now and again. And it's stalled up at about 60 odd degrees. So we weren't going to get a 400 degree boil for just one tab, but again it is enough for a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, or even just your heating up your boiling a bag meals or your freeze-dried gear. Okay, so now we're looking at the homemade block. Again, not a bad flame on it, not kicking out as high as the WetFire, but we'll see how long it burns and see what temperature we get up to. And just so it's fair, I've cleaned off the cup, cooled it down, and then the same temperature water, and let the stones cool off around the base, so we're seeing exactly the same kind of test. Alright guys, we're basically out here with the homemade, and that's burnt for 9.5 minutes. Now looking here, we're getting up to about 70-75 degrees. So it did burn longer and it did burn hotter, but I don't think either of these tabs on their own are going to get you up to a good rolling boil. Towards the end they were both just kind of keeping it at that temperature. During about the 6th minute, the homemade did get a lot more controlled with its flame, so it did kind of stay more towards the bottom end of the cup, which actually seemed to boost the temperature quite a lot. The Surefire kept up its flame around this mark for most of the trial, then just sort of died out, so it meant it burned for a lot longer, more consistently. That said, I think in regards to the simple test, the homemade is the winner, but we'll take it to the tabletop and we'll compare it further. Okay, so as we've seen, the homemade stuff does burn longer, almost twice as long as the WetFire. Now, to be fair, the WetFire is actually a lot smaller. One tab is probably about 2/3 the size of one of mine. It did burn more controlled, and the flame in this instance here, it got a lot higher than I expected, and to be honest, I thought it wasted a lot of the flame. The side of the cup was pretty charred up, and a lot of that fire could have been better directed. So if you're going to use these, you're going to have to dig a little pit, or just have some kind of barrier or some kind of breaker to keep all the flame inside. Both work great in the rain, no problems at all. This one took a little bit longer to light with my steel. I had to crack it open to expose the cotton inside. Now the great thing about the WetFire is that it's sealed up in its own little individual packet, whereas mine aren't. And the problem with these is that if you put ethanol alcohol in them, it's going to evaporate. So you need to keep it in a sealed Ziploc bag, or you can make it into your own Mylar bags. And of course also, if you don't get it perfect, any holes in the candle wax, any gaps, any cracks, the alcohol is just going to evaporate out. But if you do get it right, it will sort of impregnate the wax a bit, so even if a lot of it does evaporate, it will still have some effect. So, overall guys, I think this was a pretty good little trial, and I invite you all to try making these at home, just for a little bit of fun, and leave me a comment in the comment section, and we'll see what happens. Thanks very much.